Go ahead.
Good morning. Welcome to the University of New Haven. My name is Bill Norton. I'm the Director of Graduate Programs and Criminal Justice. I'm joined here today with my colleague Wayne Sanford from the Emergency Management Program. We'll be talking to you about employment in criminal justice and emergency management and opportunities that exist today and tomorrow. Wayne?
And my name is Wayne Sanford. I am the current coordinator of the Emergency Management Program here at the University of New Haven. And we work very closely with students to choose their courses as they work their way through the program. And we've had some great success with employment coming out of the program. And when you look at the news, like today with what's happening in Africa, it really promotes or proves why we need more people in emergency management for issues like that that are coming up around the world, not just here in the United States.
I think one of the really nice things about the Henry C. Lee College that houses both the criminal justice and emergency management programs is that we have a wide range of different disciplines housed within the college, and that enables us to offer students a very unique perspective on how public safety agencies operate and how they need to cooperate. So in areas like policing and emergency management, one of the things that we often emphasize is that students need to have a global perspective and understand how all of these different disciplines have to come together to respond to the public safety interests and needs that are existing in today's society. And so I think one of the really unique things that you see at the University of New Haven is this broad perspective that looks at all the things that have to be done to provide for first responders and for public safety across the board in the United States. One of the things that we see is that in general the entire employment space for first responders and public safety employment is a very strong area. And I think you can anticipate that it's going to continue to be a strong area of employment over the next decades. It's simply not an area of employment that you can outsource. It's a basic necessity, and it's one where if you look at the employment patterns, many of the people who took those jobs many years ago, baby boomers like myself, we're all looking to retire. And so you're beginning to see, with the economy stabilizing and getting a little better, that employment's really beginning to pick up kind of across the board in public safety employment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that there's a large number of us, baby boomers, that are looking to retire, and it is going to create a number of openings. And in addition to that, with the recent trend of increasing in storms, natural disasters, and unfortunately now with Ebola in Africa, we're seeing a lot of Department of Health that typically really needed emergency management, really didn't spend a lot of time on it, and now they're getting on board and realizing they need to do emergency planning. We're seeing at the state level a lot of different agencies are advertising now and hiring at the state level, and as well, of course, FEMA at the federal level here in the United States is a very, very important hiring capability. And last I heard, I think FEMA was trying to fill somewhere around 3,000 jobs. And they offer many different ways of entering it, and they're looking at many different fields. It's not just emergency planning. They spending a lot of time today working in the field of recovery in emergency management, which, New Orleans, Katrina was 9 years ago, 2005, and New Orleans is still not 100% recovered. So they're beginning to realize that recovery is a major, component of emergency management. So, one thing I think that's worth mentioning also is the faculty that you're going to experience here at the University of New Haven are all faculty that have actually been in the field speaking for emergency management. They are either in the field or have been in the field of emergency management. So they bring a tremendous amount of knowledge to the classroom. But the other thing they bring, and it's hard to put a dollar value on it, is contacts. It's not unusual to be talking to a professor and say, gee, I'm thinking about going in this direction. and the professor will say, well, I know someone in that area, or I have a contact in that area, and you end up getting an opportunity to meet some people and even get an employment opportunity because of someone that the professor knew in emergency management. So I think there's some special connections there with the faculty.
I think that's true really across the Henry C. Lee College. One of the things that we have done as we've developed the college over the years is we have this professional practice-based education model that we follow. And as a function of that model, the people that we look to employ are people who have both appropriate terminal degrees, graduate degrees in their field of expertise, but they also have experience working in the field. So, for example, I started out, my native Louisiana, New Orleans is coming back, Wayne. And I started as a sheriff's deputy, went from working as a sheriff's deputy to working for the state police in Louisiana. Eventually went on and got my doctorate in criminology, and then my law degree, practiced law for a number of years before I joined the faculty here at the university. We're relatively typical of our faculty in criminal justice. We try to hire people who have appropriate education. They really know the field. They know all of the theories and the research in the field, but they also know the applications in the field. And the same is true in emergency management. Wayne has extensive experience in emergency management and fire science, and again, that's true across our college. What we try to do is we hire people who know the theory, but they also know how to take the theory and put it into practice.
Yeah, my background is very similar to yours. I started as a volunteer firefighter, then a career firefighter, and after about 10 years of being a firefighter, I left, and I ran the Connecticut Fire Academy, and then I ended up going back home to be the local fire chief. And I didn't know this at the time, but when I took the job as fire chief, they told me afterwards, oh yeah, you're the emergency management director also. So that's how I got into emergency management, because I was the fire chief. And I did that for 14 and a half years, coastal community. We had a number of large storms, so I had to learn all the information about FEMA. I had to take special classes to be able to do that. And then at the end of that career, I actually worked for the governor of Connecticut, and I was involved with managing the Connecticut Emergency Operations Center. And that was a tremendous 5 years where we totally reorganized the Emergency Operations Center. We took it from a series of desks and things that were just thrown together, and we actually made workspaces. We created a GIS workstation and really revamped the Emergency Operations Center and worked through a number of emergencies, working directly with the governor to handle that. So my experience is exactly right. I mean, I kind of backed into emergency management, but 14 years as a local emergency management director, and then 5 at the state level, rewriting plans, getting plans updated for local and state level. Really gives me the background, but I feel confident that with my experience on the street, I consider myself an experiential educator myself because of my background.
I think one of the things that's also true, we have a wonderful faculty who have good credentials, excellent experience. But the other thing you tend to find in our graduate programs is that we draw students who have experience in the field. And so the interaction that you have in the class, I think, is also an important part of the educational experience at UNH. So you'll typically see in our classes that you'll have students who are not yet working in the field. They're pursuing their degree in order to help them get an entry-level job. And along with those students, you'll have people who are working in the field 5 to 10 years who are looking for the master's degree to help them move forward in their career. Perhaps they're in a police department. They might be a sergeant who's interested in getting promoted up into the command level of the agency, hopeful that one day they'll develop a career to be a chief of police, that sort of thing. And the master's degree is very helpful for that kind of career development. And so typically what you see in the classroom is that you have a really enriched classroom that has people who have that kind of practical experience in the field, and they typically have a good sense for the needs of the workplace at that moment. And lots of times, a lot of my students will tell me that they found an entry-level job because one of their colleagues in a class mentioned that, their department was going to be hiring or something like that. So it's a really nice blend of students that you typically find in our classes.
Yeah, I think that one of the other things that comes out of that is that in the students, in doing their work and posting their reports and discussions, the other students learn from those students that have a little bit of experience in the field. So there's a tremendous opportunity, not only from learning from the faculty, but from learning from the other students and the sharing. And I've even seen that in the emergency management when the students get together. One of the things that you'll see them talking about on the side will be about jobs. Where there are jobs and how are they making it out and where are they coming from. I think that's important.
Yeah, I think in our program, at least, it sort of goes in both directions. Certainly the students who haven't worked in the field yet learn a lot from the people who've been working in the field. But you'll also see that the people who are working the field frequently learn a good deal from the new students. I remember one of my classes a couple of years ago, one of the police officers was interested in crime analysis, and you mentioned the importance of GIS and modern public safety. And one of the undergrads had taken a couple of classes in their undergraduate program in geographical information systems, and was able to help the officer. That ultimately led to their getting a job as a crime analyst. Wow. And so again, there's a nice synergy that exists very frequently in our classes. So I think it's a great feature for us.
Yeah. There's one thing I could say about emergency management is, as a field, there's not a job or a field today that doesn't need emergency management. So one thing that we see in the emergency management program is that people are coming from many different walks of life into the emergency management program. We've had meteorologists, we've had law enforcement, fire, as well as you would think. We've also had health people, but we're actually getting, in some cases, individuals that are in facility maintenance because they're handed this job and said, "Oh, by the way, you just won this, and you left the room for 5 minutes, so now you're the emergency manager." So in the emergency management program, students are coming from a tremendously different background, and to watch them share together, I think, is really important. That they can come to emergency management with a very diverse background. It's not limited. I think that's important that you may say, gee, I have a background in criminal justice. Would I fit? Yes. As I said, we had an individual that came with a meteorology background, and she had just graduated college and said, I don't want to be on television. I want to work for emergency management. I want to work for a state or government that needs to know about meteorology, what's happening, to make good decisions. And that's the field that she's chosen. And
I think one of the other things that you see in emergency management is that there's a tremendous need for it in the private sector. That businesses absolutely have to plan for emergencies, and particularly in larger businesses, it's a big issue for them.
Yeah, actually, in the online emergency management program, because of that component, there's actually an entire semester on continuity of operation planning, because that's where it is today. Where do we get our, we're in the newspaper business, so where do we get our ink from? Where do we get our newspaper from? Do we get it all from one place? You don't realize when things happen. The recent tsunami in Japan, we all sat there and watched that salt water flood areas. There's a company that uses a particular color blue ink that was only grown. There was the plant that produced that blue ink only grew there in that valley in Japan that was flooded. So talk about needing a continuity of operation plan and they wanted to make sure that this is, a company that we all recognize. They wanted their blue. Correct. They didn't want somebody else's blue. So something happens over in Japan, and it's affecting you here in the United States in a business that you run. So we don't really know in emergency management. where the disaster is and how it's going to impact us. I think that's important.
One of the other things I think it's important to recognize is that in a field like criminal justice, much the same as emergency management, there's a very broad array of careers that are available to people. So, for example, most of our students go into traditional law enforcement kinds of jobs historically, but there's also a lot of really great job opportunities that are in areas like community corrections. We have many students who've gone through our graduate program and become probation or parole officers. Many students who work in victim advocacy roles. One of the things that you have witnessed over the last decade to 2 decades is the really enormous growth in the amount of service that is provided to crime victims in American criminal justice. When I first started working in the field, victims really didn't receive any consideration at all in the criminal justice system. And today, we spend a great deal of effort trying to care for victims, trying to ensure that their rights are protected. And so across the board, you're seeing in law enforcement agencies and other agencies, you're seeing victim advocates being hired, victim witness protection folks being hired. And so that's a newer area where there's a lot of growth opportunity. Just a whole range of different kinds of employment opportunities that exist. And one of the fastest growing areas in criminal justice is actually private security. And so we have lots of students who go out and work in various aspects of private security as well. If you look at the data nationally, more people work in private as opposed to public security employment.
And one of just a couple of our recent graduates, we had a student, military, came to us after he had left the military, went through the emergency management program, and he was just hired by a state because of the Sandy Hook incident here in Connecticut and the interest in school safety all across the country. He's actually working for a state agency doing nothing but helping schools update their emergency plans. We have another student that recently graduated that's basically managing, he's a fire chief in a large facility, private sector, and they make helicopters. I guess you can kind of figure who that is here in Connecticut. And and he's using his emergency management skills not only as the fire chief in the facility, private facility, but also in the facilities that they have around the world, building helicopters. And we have another student that was actually hired before he graduated. He did something, he had a connection as an undergraduate to do an internship. He went there, did an internship, and he's currently working at a national company that runs 5 nuclear power plants. And he was hired to manage the new NRC requirements for nuclear planning. He's now moved to Virginia, and he's working for them full-time, updating all their emergency response plans based on the upgrades from the NRC because of the Japan tsunami. So our students from the emergency management program are getting pretty good jobs, and they are around the country. They're not all located here in the Northeast. They are moving around a little bit. So I think it's exciting when you see the graduates get good jobs and they travel around the United States.
Let's start moving on to some of the questions that we have, and we'll wrap this up. One question that we're routinely getting is, what about individuals that are just trying to get into the field? They have unrelated undergraduate degrees, and they really want to get into the criminal justice or the emergency management fields. How does getting the graduate degree at UNH kind of help support that function?
Well, over the years, I've been the director of the graduate program in criminal justice for many years at the University of New Haven, and I've had students from just about every undergraduate degree program that you can imagine. You don't have to have an undergraduate degree in criminal justice to come into our program. We specifically designed the program so that it would be open to students from any major. I've had students from art history, I've had English majors, you name it, I think we've had them. Essentially what it allows you to do is it allows you to take your undergraduate degree and put a occupational focus on it, if you will. to give you some specialized education from very high-quality faculty. And again, we have a large network of graduates who can connect you to, and that really gives you the kind of credential that you're looking for in order to be able to go out and look for a position in community corrections, policing, any kind of field that you might be interested in criminal justice. And what I've seen over the years is it's the sort of thing that my colleague was talking about before. Our faculty have all worked in the field, they have connections in the field, they can help you identify opportunities. We have a very fine internship opportunities, so many of our students do that sort of thing. Many students learn from their colleagues about job opportunities. So typically that's how people kind of break into the field.
Yeah, and I would say the same for emergency management. We actually have it. It's funny you mention English. We have an English major that's starting in September in the field of emergency management. So what we try to do in the first couple of courses, because we realize people come from such a different background, in the first course we try to bring people up to speed, and we provide, it ramps up very slowly. So that we get that background information, and then we get into more details as the program is going along. So we try to go out of our way, knowing that many of the students that are entering do not have an undergrad degree in emergency management. So I think the courses are designed with that thought in mind in the emergency management field.
Another question that we have that I'm seeing a lot is that individuals are wondering about the relationship between emergency management and criminal justice and how those two industries are working together.
Well, I think they naturally have to work together. They're both part of a system of first responders that really covers public safety in the United States. And so throughout really the history of providing for public safety, the field agencies have always needed to coordinate their activities. If you're going to have any kind of a meaningful event that's going to occur, you're going to need police services to respond. You're typically going to need the fire service to respond. You're going to need emergency management to respond. And so we're all part of a network of first responders. And so in the applied world, in the practical world, if you will, all of these agencies have worked together for many years. One of the things I think is very exciting about the University of New Haven is we're one of the few universities that really brings all of those different disciplines together in the same college.
Yeah. Yeah, we have many of our students also that will get a master's in emergency management, and because of the way the program is laid out, they could get a certificate in criminal justice, or people in the criminal justice program could get a certificate in emergency management. And I would agree that when there's a large-scale incident, not the run-of-the-day motor vehicle accident at the intersection, you won't see emergency management there. But when there's a large-scale incident that happens, emergency management will be there to really help the police officers and to help the firefighters. You know, you have an incident where maybe there's a number of people that are deceased, and you don't want that to be shown on television. Well, emergency management can make one phone call and close down the airspace over the incident, so no news helicopter could be getting that footage. It would be hard for police or fire to do that. And those are the specialty things that emergency management brings to the table, that we can make an incident run smoother for everybody. So it is a family, and they all work together.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your interest in the program. If you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to contact us.
I would say the same thing. You know, we're available by phone or email, and please reach out to us. I'm not opposed to speaking to individual students that have specialty questions that you'd like answer for. Thank you for your time.